Hi, everyone. It is great to be here. So my fun fact is that I'm really bad at listening to instructions, apparently, and I forgot to add a slide with my fun fact. Um, but I will say that my fun fact is actually that my husband, myself, our 2.5-year-old toddler, and our 3.5-month-old son have actually been living in Amsterdam for the past month. We have family here in the Netherlands, and so we try to spend at least a month, if not longer, here every year. So I'm luckily on the same time zone as you all, but normally I do reside full time in the Bay Area in California. All right, so quick review of our agenda today, what we're going to be talking about. We're going to look at GA3 or UA versus GA4. This obviously gets less and less important as time goes on, since for many customers, UA is in the past, but just a quick reminder. Then we're going to look at 5 reasons to love GA4. Hopefully you'll walk away from this talk and maybe you won't love it quite yet, but you'll at least say, hey, I learned something pretty interesting. If I apply that, it might make GA4 a little bit better for me. We're also going to look at some common reporting mistakes and how you can fix them. So I know that many people have some frustrations with GA4, and I think a lot of those are actually just things that, maybe you just don't know that something exists in GA4 or how to find it. And so hopefully we can solve some of those issues for you today. And then of course, we'll finish with a couple of slides on getting started as soon as possible. Okay, so Universal Analytics sunset. It happened mostly. Some of you might still be seeing some Universal Analytics hits being processed. My husband is in marketing and spent a long time in analytics. And just the other day, he was like, have you heard of UA being cut off like completely? Because we seem to have stopped collecting data midday on like August 29th. Turns out they did, in fact, stop collecting data that day. But most properties have stopped by now. There was kind of this long trickle where some stopped right on July 1st and others continued processing for a bit. But now the question is, what now, right? Where do we go from here? We've mostly stopped being able to rely on Universal Analytics unless you're a 360 customer, at which point you have till June of next year. But the rest of us have to turn to GA4. So a quick status check, and I think Phil has a poll he's going to put up right about now. Who is primarily using Google Analytics 4 as their analytics tool? We'll give this just a minute. All right. So it looks like we have the majority of people, close to 90% on the call, who are actually using GA4 as their primary analytics tool today. So that's awesome. I don't know if that's by choice or by necessity because you no longer have UA, but either way, congratulations. A couple people who are using another tool as primary, and about 5 who are really still holding on onto the hope that their UA will never shut off. I do have some bad news for you. Unfortunately, it will shut off any day now. So get ready to use GA4. Okay, thank you for that poll. All right, so let's look at GA3 versus GA4. So Universal Analytics, or analytics.js, or more recently gtag.js, it was launched in October of 2012. And here's a fun fact for you. It's actually based on Classic Analytics, which was launched in 2007, which was based on Urchin Analytics, which was acquired by Google in 2005, which code dates back to the late 90s, like 1998. So Universal Analytics is actually very, very old. I'm sure they've had some updates over time, but very dated architecture. It's centered around the concept of sessions, focused on metrics like page views, sessions, and bounce rate. It was highly customizable, but it lacked structure for things like events. So I'm sure you're all very familiar with the category action and label hierarchy in Universal Analytics. I stress, please, please, please do not carry that over to GA4 in your migrations. And this was great because you could do a lot with it, but it also meant that you had to be very, very consistent. Otherwise, your data would very quickly get dirty as multiple people were implementing events that meant different things. And of course, as we know, this was deprecated mostly on July 1st of 2023. So GA4, Google Analytics 4, it was first released in 2019 in a public beta called App Plus Web and renamed to GA4 in October of 2020 when Google said, this is the new default property type. It's the future of analytics. It focuses on events and parameters. So everything in GA4 is an event. Even a page view is actually an event. And it is highly customizable, but it offers more structured data, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Okay, that was a very quick overview of GA3 versus GA4. If you want a more extensive overview, I actually have a multi-page PDF that you can get at that link you see on the screen, looking at a feature by feature level, Universal Analytics GA3 versus GA4. All right, so now let's turn to 5 reasons to love Google Analytics 4. So the first reason is that Google Analytics 4 makes your data analysis easier. The first way is that you're actually collecting more data for your data analysis, your content analysis out of the box. So Google Analytics 4 has this really cool thing called enhanced measurement, which is on by default when you create a new property. And essentially, this is a handful of events that will be collected for you on your behalf. If you don't want them, you can always toggle them off, say don't actually collect these, but Google Analytics will now collect for you scrolls, outbound links, site search, video engagement, file downloads. There's a form interactions one, which I don't suggest using, and so on. And so I really like this because I think it democratizes data, especially for smaller organizations that don't necessarily have the in-house talent to be able to implement some of these things or the time. And also some of these things used to be kind of complicated to implement. And now they are as simple as leaving that button toggled on. There are new default channel groupings with more granularity in GA4. So in Universal Analytics, the default channel grouping included, I believe, 11 channels. In GA4, this has gone up to 18. So they've been very thoughtful in how they are reorganizing data into channels. There are a lot of new channels such as paid video, organic social, paid shopping, organic video to break these out more granularly, help give you more insight right out of the box. There's a whole list of these on the Google Analytics Help Center. You can just Google GA4 default channels and you will see a whole list of what is now available in the product. Or you can create custom channel groups. So this was more recently released in GA4, a very loved functionality in UA. This is now available in GA4 to be able to create any custom channel groups that you would like to see in GA4. There's also more search engines that are included natively in reporting. So this was a big ask from customers, especially things like DuckDuckGo and other search engines that hadn't previously been included in the list. So these are now available out of the box. Real-time has gotten a nice facelift. If you were a user of Firebase or Google Analytics for Firebase, this should look somewhat familiar. It's very similar to that. It's this kind of gray and white map overview with a bunch of cards. And in particular, this event count by event name card you see here. If you click into any event name in this card, it will actually open up to show all of the parameters that are collected on that event. And if you click into a parameter, it will show the value that has been collected. So this is a great way to, in real time, see all of the events and their associated parameters that are happening on your site. And it's very interactive in that way. Pages and screens. So this one I included because I wanted to clear up a little confusion. In Universal Analytics, the All Pages report was organized by page path. In GA4, it is out of the box by page title and screen class, but as you can see on your screen, it's a simple toggle to change that to page path. And when we get into customization here shortly, you can even customize that to be the default if you would prefer. All right, so number 2, customization, report customizations. You can build any report that you want. Now, I really, really love this feature in Google Analytics 4 because this is completely new. to GA4. Never before could you actually customize the default reports that are available in the reporting interface. Never before could you customize the left-hand navigation and change around what reports are available or how they're organized. So this is very monumental, I think, in terms of a shift from UA to GA4, and gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we actually want to show the customers of our analytics data. So here is the landing page report in GA4. Some of you may remember back when GA4 was launched, it didn't actually have a native landing page report. So we hacked our way into that. But thankfully these days there is a native landing page report. It lives in the engagement section. But if you click into the little pencil icon in the upper right-hand corner, that will open the customization screen for any report that you are currently on. Looks like this. It's just the report loaded on the left side, and on the right, a bunch of options. So you'll see dimensions and metrics where you can edit which dimensions and metrics are included, which are default, report filters, charts, and more. So report filters is going to be the important one that we're going to look at here in this example. And in this case, we are going to add a report filter of the session default channel group is organic search. What I'm doing here is I'm saying, okay, I want my landing page report to only show people who came from organic search. So essentially, this is now an SEO landing pages report. And then just to quickly show how easy that is to make, I did this in less than 30 seconds, clicked into edit, clicked into the report filters, added that session default channel group, selected the value of organic search, and applied it and saved it as a new report. So what are the benefits of doing something like this? Something as simple as creating a filter on a report like this? Well, here you can see that I now have my landing page report pulled up. And on the upper bar next to the title SEO landing page, there's a little filter icon, which indicates that this is a filtered report. And if you scroll over that, it'll tell you that. So this is filtered to be just SEO traffic or organic traffic. That means that my primary dimension is already filtered, right? It's already just looking at organic search, which means I still have that secondary dimension available to do something like add a secondary dimension of country. So now in my reporting UI, I actually have essentially built a way into having an additional dimension available if I know that that primary dimension is always going to be filtered in the same way. So that's pretty cool and a way to make reports a little bit more accessible for a wider range of teams, right? So your SEO team would love something like this. And you can also use customization to customize, as I said, the dimensions and metrics included. And in this case, I'm showing you that you can use custom dimensions as your primary dimensions. So I've opened up the dimension picker. I've looked through my custom dimensions. This is a property for my blog. So I have custom dimensions like article title, article tag, article date, and I can choose to add those as primary dimensions in this report, and even change by clicking on the 3 dots to make one of them the primary dimension that will open up in this report. And then I have a report that I've titled blog pages clicked from the homepage. We'll look at an example a little later where that will make more sense. But essentially, my article title is now my primary dimension in this report, and this is available in the reporting UI. And then to put all of this together for customization, we have the report library. So this is where you can choose how to organize all of your reports and how you want to organize your left-hand navigation. So you'll see here in my left-hand nav, I have Krista's faves. You'll also see the report collection here in the center. And when I click in to open that up, you can see these are all of my favorites or my most used reports in one place, so that I don't have to go through and build them every time or click into different areas to find them. I've organized them for myself into just one quick and easy to access area. So you can do this for your marketing team. You can have a marketing team section, or regional section, a US section, a Europe section, or UK and Ireland section. So you can use report filters to do all of those types of things. Sorry. You can use report filters to do all those types of things, and then report collections to organize them all. Okay, moving on. Explore has some really cool features. So Explore is the deep dive analysis tool available in Google Analytics 4. And it has a bunch of techniques that are not available in the reporting UI, such as a what I like to call a table report on steroids, where you can kind of add as many dimensions and metrics as you want, break it down, segment it, and so on, a lot more so than you can do for the table reports in the reporting UI. It also has things like funnels and path and segment overlap, cohort analysis, and more, all things that are not available in the reporting UI. So funnels. This is a very useful report where you can build a funnel up to 10 steps in length. Here we're looking at one for the KS Digital website, where people come to the KS Digital homepage, they go over to my course site, the Academy site, they add a product to their cart. This is a very simple funnel, but things that I can do with this are, if I see that somebody drops off after adding to cart, and if I were to add the final step of purchase here, for example, but they don't make it to purchase, they drop off after add to cart, I can create a segment of those users. I can analyze my other site data, but more importantly, I can create an audience of those users that have gotten to the add to cart stage, but fallen off before they've purchased, and then remarket to them or retarget them with that audience through the Google platform. So that is really cool, a great way to help re-engage users and get them to complete whatever your conversion action is. In this case, it would have been a purchase. You can also segment funnels. So when you add segments, in this case, I have an organic segment and a direct segment traffic. I can see them side by side. So blue is organic and purple is direct, and I can see each funnel step by each segment. You can add up to 4 at a time for a nice little view there. You can also break down a funnel and make it open or closed and so on. So pretty useful little report here. Next, we have pathing. So the pathing report now thankfully has page path as an additional node type. You'll see that here on the screen highlighted in pink. So when this first launched, it didn't actually include page path. There was a ton of feedback that actually we want to see this by page path. So thankfully that has fully launched now. And then just like funnels and other reports, you can segment this or break it down. So in this case, I've segmented my path report by organic traffic. And if I hit that start over button in the upper right-hand corner, I can actually do a backwards path and see how people get to a certain conversion point. So in this case, how do people get to adding to cart on my site? So they came from a certain course site, or they came from various info pages or about pages on my site. And that can give me the information I need to try to optimize that experience for customers or get more people to go through that funnel. And then, of course, you can also segment a backwards path. Tip number 4 here for why we love Google Analytics 4 is integrations make GA4 stronger. And I think the really big takeaway here is that in Universal Analytics, the only integrations that were available for free were Google Ads and Google Search Console. Everything else was only available if you were a GA360 client. In GA4, all integrations are free and available to everyone. The one exception, I think, will be if and when it launches the Salesforce integration, but everything else is free. So that means we have Google Ads, but now Search Ads 360, DV 360, Google Search Console. Here's some of the reports you get if you integrate Search Console. And then most importantly, I think to many people probably on this talk right now is the free BigQuery export of all of your raw event data from Google Analytics 4 to BigQuery. So this is huge. People paid $150,000 a year for GA360 with Universal Analytics just to have this BigQuery export of data. And now this is available for free for GA4 for everyone. So definitely take advantage of this if you're not already. And then the last reason to love GA4 is that it has a brand new data model. And you might hear that and say, oh, something new I have to learn, or this makes it more confusing. But when you actually understand the data model, you'll start to see how useful it really is and can be. So it is fully events-based. There are 4 types of events. We have automatically collected events. So you get these out of the box as soon as you install the snippet. Those are things like first visit, first open, page view, screen view, etc. And we have our enhanced measurement events. We talked about those earlier. These are out of the box as well, on by default. You can choose to have them on or off. And those are things like scroll, video engagement, site search, outbound clicks, and more. And then we have recommended events. So recommended events are categorized by vertical, so e-commerce or retail, travel or games. And these are a list of event names that Google says, here are some pretty standard events for your vertical, your industry. Go ahead and use these events exactly like with this exact name. And if you do so, we can anticipate what that means and then, potentially provide additional reporting. So for example, gaming has very specific reports for games if you're using the gaming specific nomenclature available. Also for e-commerce, it's recommended here, but it's actually required that you use the e-commerce syntax that Google Analytics 4 provides to be able to unlock those reports. And then finally, custom events. So anything that doesn't fit in a recommended event, you can always create your own events for that. So let's look at this in more detail. This is my blog, KristaSeiden.com. It's just a blog where I blog about analytics. And like a normal blog, it has a bunch of posts on there, and the posts have a summary and then a button to continue reading. So when you click that continue reading button, I am firing an event called select content. And with that event, I have parameters added so that I can pull in pieces of information about this event. So if you are a free customer or standard customer of GA4, you can add 25 parameters per event. If you're a 360 customer, that goes up to 100 parameters per event. So what do I mean by this? Well, my event name here you can see is select content. And the parameters I'm collecting, and we saw these earlier, are things like button title, article tag, article date, and the link URL. So now let's look at an interaction of how this data actually comes in. So somebody comes to the blog, they click this continue reading button, and then in Google Analytics, I am going to collect this select content event here. So I'm in an events report here. I've filtered for select content, and then I can add a secondary dimension. So I've added my article title secondary dimension to see which articles are being clicked on. You'll remember that I also earlier in customization used the same custom dimension to make a report that had it as the primary dimension. So it would be accomplishing a very similar thing here. But I can change this to article tag or article date and see all of this information. Or I can put it all together in one report in Explore in that freeform report. And I can see my event name is select content, my article date, article tag, article title. I can see that, oops, I forgot to add an article tag to a certain post. I know exactly what post that is. So it won't be hard to then go into WordPress and fix that. And then you can also append test info to events via parameters. So if you're doing testing on your site, for example, on ksdigital.co, my business website, I have various boxes to sign up for my newsletter. And I've tested out different content in these boxes to see if one headline works better than another. And so for that, I'm looking at an event called newsletter signup and parameters such as subscription type, subscription location, subscription name, experiment name, experiment ID, variant ID, and a user property of visitor type. Are they a prospect or a known customer? So all this information can then be used and analyzed to understand which of these headlines works best on my signup box. So here you can see I've got that signup event and a few of these parameters pulled in to see which one's performing best. So the signup event on my GA3 versus GA4 guide here was performing the best in this case. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit here from all of the things that we love about Google Analytics 4 to some of the common mistakes that I see, and hopefully some good tips for you to take away to solve for those mistakes. So the first one that I hear is that the interface of GA4 is just too simple. So on the left, we have universal analytics, and you can see there are a ton of links to different reports. So for example, we had a browser and OS report link within the left-hand nav. In GA4, we only have a couple of links. And then specifically for tech, we have an overview and tech details. There's no browser and OS or device category or any specific report available there in the left-hand nav. That's because GA4 actually consolidates a lot of these things into a single report. So the tech details report actually includes 10 dimensions in one table. And as you can see from the little GIF playing on screen, you can just select those from the dropdown and change between screen resolution, device category, browser, OS, etc. So all of those reports that were in the left-hand nav of Universal Analytics actually still exist in GA4. It is just more consolidated. Similarly, the demographic details report combines 7 reports in one table. I also hear confusion between the acquisition reports. So in GA4, there are actually 2 types of acquisition reports. There is a user acquisition report and a traffic acquisition report. So the user acquisition report is going to be the very first campaign source or medium that brought a user or a cookie to the site. So essentially, this is first touch attribution. And then the traffic acquisition report is going to be the campaign source or medium that started that particular session. So this is session attribution. And this is going to be most similar to Universal Analytics, since Universal Analytics was also session-based. And then you can actually use these two together to understand how people first arrive and then how they come back. So here you can see I have my session source medium as my primary dimension, my first user source medium as my secondary dimension. So I can see if they first came from Google Organic or they first came from a referral from Simo Ahava's website, then they came back from Google Organic. Keep in mind that GA4 still uses last non-direct click for traffic attribution. So you won't see direct here. If they came back direct, it's going to be the last non-direct attributable thing. It's a little confusing because it doesn't actually say last non-direct anywhere in the interface, but that is the case. But this is a really nice way to be able to try to understand the various channels that are bringing users to your site and bringing them back. I hear this one a lot. Lack of views. GA4 doesn't have any views. How am I supposed to organize my data, segment it for different groups of users, etc.? So UA supported a lot of views for different purposes. People use them for regional reporting, for example, a US view, a UK view, or specific teams, a marketing view, a product view, and so on. In GA4, we only have properties. And so the tip is to actually use report filters to create the groupings of reports that you're interested in. So in this case, I'm actually adding a country filter to a bunch of different reports, saving it as a new report called US page path in this case. And then I will have a whole report collection that is, in my case, fully filtered for just US traffic. So I essentially made copies of each of these reports, filtered them just for US, and now I've added that to my left-hand nav as my United States reporting section. Now, collections allow you to put all this together, modify it. What it doesn't allow you to do is grant access on a user or user group basis. So you can't just show the United States data to certain groups. Everybody who has access to the property will have access to this collection, but at least you can organize it so that they have a certain place to go when they come in here. Another thing I hear is specifically for Explore that it's just too complex and overwhelming. People don't know how or how to use it, where to even start when they get in there. So one of the issues in particular is that explorations are not shareable. And so the fix here is to make a copy. On the right-hand side of the exploration overview section, you'll see 3 dots. If you click those and hit duplicate, you'll be able to duplicate, make a copy of that report that is now your own version. If you make edits to that report, it does not sync back to the one that you made a copy from, so keep that in mind. But now you can interact with this any way that you would like. Another thing that I hear is using the wrong dimensions or just not being sure about what dimensions to use. So my tip here is to just be careful and know what you are selecting. So Explore reports do require you to add all of the dimensions, metrics, and segments that you're going to use to them. And so you need to know kind of what these different things mean. And in this case, I'm showing on screen two categories: traffic source and attribution. Traffic source is going to include the first user dimensions that we looked at that are part of the first user traffic attribution report in the reporting UI. And it's also going to include session reports, so the traffic attribution reports. Essentially, everything under the traffic source category are the dimensions that you do want to use. There's also this category called attribution. And these ones have very deceiving names because they are just source medium or campaign. And this is what you're used to from Universal Analytics rather than seeing first user source medium or session source medium. But these ones in the attribution section are actually event scoped. And so if you select those, the scoping of your reports will very likely be off and you won't see any data. So I would say 98% of the time, you probably only need the traffic source attribution dimensions. But just know what you're selecting and how they work together. The next issue I hear is sampling in Explore. So my tip here is to reduce the time period or change the precision. So if you're a free customer, you may hit sampling if you have more than 10 million events within the time period selected for the report. So if you have, let's say, a year of data selected, and that includes more than 10 million events, then you're going to hit sampling. If you have maybe only 3 months of data selected and you don't have that much data and you're under the 10 million, you won't hit sampling. For 360 customers, this goes up to 1 billion events in the time period. So the tip: reduce the time period to ensure that you can not hit sampling. Or you may have the option to change the precision. So this is something that was available in Universal Analytics as well in the reporting UI. So there'll be faster precision or more accurate. And if you're a 360 customer, you'll be able to choose between them. Just so you know, all customers can choose between them. 360 customers are able to request an unsampled report in Explore. But the more detailed results is a 10x version of the faster results. So in this case, it said this was based on 3.86% of data. The more detailed would be then 38% of data. Another very common issue that I hear is, where are my custom dimensions? I'm sending all of these parameters to Google Analytics 4, but my dimensions are not available. And the issue is that you might have forgotten to register them. So in Google Analytics 4, you actually have to register all of the dimensions that you want to show up in reporting. So here you can see a little GIF of doing that. It's very simple, just a couple of clicks. In the admin section, you go to custom definitions, custom dimensions, you select the event parameter that you want to register and give it a name. I highly suggest naming it the exact same thing as the event parameter. It keeps it very straightforward. And now it's registered, and going forward, you'll be able to use that in reporting. Yep, and here's an example. We've looked at this already, but I'm looking at that select content event, and I'm adding additional custom dimensions like article title or article tag or article date. And then you can use your registered custom dimensions in Explore as well. All right, so that is all of the common issues that I hear that we are covering today. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is just really quickly how you get started with GA4. It is moving day. It's been moving day for quite some time now. Hopefully you have already made the move, and if not, you will get started soon. And to get started, well, first of all, hopefully you're ready. Hopefully you're in. Let's do this. But to get started, you'll need to set up a GA4 property, and I want to encourage you to do this manually if you have not already. Google Analytics 4 does have this feature they're calling Jumpstart, which essentially creates a GA4 property for you based on your universal analytics settings if you have not opted out. But you do not want to use that property because it hasn't really gotten your stamp of approval, right? You haven't done that implementation. And it's very likely carrying over data that is dirty from your UA setup or just not formed properly for Google Analytics 4. For example, it takes the event category action label and makes the action the event name and the category and the label parameters on that event. So that can get very messy very fast, depending on how you have action being used in Universal Analytics. So highly recommend opting out of that if you haven't been migrated already, or if you have, you will know because this is what a migrated property looks like. It just shows up in your property list. In this case, my UA property was Krista Seiden -2, and my GA4 one that was auto-migrated for me is Krista Seiden -2 GA4. Not to be confused with the one below, Krista Seiden GA4, which I created myself. It'll have a -GA4 in the name. And then when in doubt, Google it. There are a ton of helpful resources out there. So this is my blog, KristaSeiden.com, with a lot of GA4 setup guides and various things. Of course, the wonderful Simo Ohava has everything technical and GTM related to GA and GTM. Julius and Analytics Mania do an amazing job of putting out content, and there are so many more that I'm not going to be able to mention here today. And lastly, I do teach courses for Google Analytics 4. You can find them at academy.ksdigital.co. And for anybody who is registered for this wonderful program, if you use the code GA4WARD, you will get $300 off any full course or a bundle. So thank you very much for having me. And I think we have some time for Q&A now.
Thanks for that, Krista. I'm just going to load up the Q&A now.
See lots of questions in the chat.
I'll read these out from the top. So here are asked, are we able to assign reports to a specific section or role or user?
No. So I think you're referring to what we looked at in the customization section where I created a whole collection, for example, for the US. You're not allowed to assign that. You can't assign that to a specific user. This is definitely a requested feature. It's something I think Google is thinking a lot about. If it is something that comes, I would think that it's probably only going to be for 360 customers. So hopefully we'll see something like that. But as of now, no, you can't just show those report collections to any particular user or user group. They will be available to everybody.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they also solved the issue on Explorer where it's the person that creates it is editor and others are read-only. The second question from Arama, if I pronounced that right, do you know why it's not possible to add a time dimension to cost metrics, so Google or non-Google? So I'm guessing it means a date. For example, I cannot segment my Google Ads spend by day or month. Unlike in UA, time and cost data cannot be paired in reports.
It's a little bit in the weeds. So I haven't looked at this particular example myself, so I don't have much to hypothesize on here. Apologies.
Okay, yeah, I think I would have thought that the date should be, maybe it's the drill down of hour. Maybe that's what, because I know the hour metric was only added fairly recently, so maybe it's not the cost per hour. Maybe that's missing. Okay, Ian Woods asked, is Google going to push the functionality to right-click on a report and open a new tab? It's so frustrating to not have a simple function. Also, is Google going to, and these are more like feature requests. Annotations is a common one. Again, such a simple element. I mean, what's the best?
So I mean, I think Google's heard a lot of these. I think annotations has become something that they hear daily. So my hope is that they will be addressing that soon. but we'll see. I'm not sure about the other one. I think just overall the explore functionality could use a bit of work. For example, being able to like resize columns, make them more easily visible, that kind of thing. But I think it remains to be seen.
Yeah. And so anonymous one. Someone said, I find it hard to find parameters as I just remember what they're called and find it hard to keep track of them. Have you got any tips on making this easier? So I think this is in relation to the names of metrics and dimensions that is slightly different in GA3 versus GA4. I've got an issue. I assume it's just an offline library of parameters. Wasn't sure if there's a way of making it a better way.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this is talking about like custom dimensions that you're sending custom parameters, in which case in the reporting UI, if you're adding a secondary dimension, they would be under the custom area of that. So same in the explore section. But also if you're just talking about regular dimensions that are available in GA4, you can also look at them like that. There is the similar to Universal Analytics, the metrics and dimensions query explorer available from the Google Analytics DevRel team for the dev tool site. That's a great way to kind of look up all of the standard things as well.
Yeah, I think there's a I don't have it to hand, but I think someone's done a kind of a metric search kind of a sheet.
Yes, I've seen that out there.
Yeah. So Manja asked, what events are captured in the user engagement event?
This is a timing event. So it's sending a timing ping in the background essentially.
Okay. And Steve asks, I've noticed GA4 properties backfilling user data. I'm not sure if that's a question or a statement.
I don't know that you've noticed that. I don't think GA4 properties are backfilling any data. In fact, I'm fairly certain they are not. One thing that Google has said is that if you have a Universal Analytics property that has been jump started, so they've created a GA4 property for you, they will not turn down your Universal Analytics property until I believe it's like 10 days of data has collected in the new GA4 property. So they're trying to give you a little bit of data there before they're going to shut off access to your UA property. That's I think the only thing that we've seen there, and it's not backdating. It's just them creating the property and before they really let you know about it.
Yeah, it'd be nice if there's a magic button for like import GA3 data for last 5 years, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's just not possible, right? Because the data models are very different.
Yeah, it would be on audiences. It'd be nice if, because on GA3 it did, when you created an audience, it allowed for, I think it was like, I can't remember if it was 30 days or 500 days, like look back on the audience, maybe 30 days, I think. So at least it created an audience with some users in it. But yeah, I wish they would add that feature. I think also editing audiences, I'm not sure you can do at the moment, but yeah. So Matthew asked, very interesting, especially backward funnels. Since
you mean backwards pathing then?
Yeah. Since moving GA4, I'm seeing conversion of values associated to cart pages instead of the landing page. Is this a setup issue or a feature? I think it sounds like, I mean, if it's e-commerce, assuming it's e-commerce, if it's cart, you shouldn't really have revenue on the cart. It should just be on that sale complete page. So I would assume that sounds like a setup issue.
Sounds like potentially a setup issue. Yeah, I think we're not really debugging here. So you'll have to take a deeper look at that one.
Yeah. Is there so Jerome asked, is there an easy way you work around to share expiration reports across another property? This is a common one. So is there a shared asset feature?
I wish. Unfortunately, not yet. I think this is a request the team has gotten quite a bit. And I should say for any feature requests, let Google know. There is a feedback icon. I don't think it's actually available in the Explore section, but in the reporting UI of GA4 in the bottom right-hand corner, you can send feedback. You can even take a screenshot of the page you're on and leave feedback specific to that. But use that and say like, hey, we really like annotations to come back to GA4, or it would be great if we can have the ability to share our exploration reports as a template to other properties. So definitely use that feedback option. They do look at that feedback.
Yeah, it'd be nice if there was a way of voting up feedback as well, but yeah. Okay, so Steve's asked, I've noticed recently that GA4 properties are starting to, oh, we've answered that one, sorry. So Christina has asked, now that July the 1st has passed, and we're all still here using GA4, just between me and you, what is the personal assessment of how Google is supporting and promoting the GA4 community at large, as they did with UA over the past years, particularly with key influencers like yourself? So it's kind of an evangelist kind of question.
Yeah. So unfortunately, they don't have any full-time evangelists on the payroll these days. I'm fortunate that I still get to work really closely with the Google team on GA4. So we did actually just release the new Google Analytics Academy courses on Skillshop. So I think there is, some work being done on kind of the education sphere, but the community, as we know and loved it that we had with UA, unfortunately doesn't have the same support. But I think there is a lot of desire and appetite, I think, from the community at large. And I'm not sure if you saw Simo's post some weeks back, specifically calling out this point. It was a great one. But I think the Google team is starting to hear that feedback, and they're starting to think about what advocacy and evangelism could mean for GA4 going forward. So, we're constantly pushing them there, and I do hope that they come back with something as vibrant as what we had kind of back in the day.
Yeah, I think I remember back in the day there was even like an Avinash TV thing that used to exist. So maybe they need to bring that back. So Diogo has asked, do you think?
No, the answer is no.
Okay.
Google's never going to make their modeling secret sauce known to end users.
Jerome asked, is the landing page dimension only available from October the 20, when it was added in 2020, 22 onwards, or does this apply from landing pages standard reports?
So I think that the landing page dimension itself was added prior to October 2022. I think quite a while before then. So whenever the dimension was actually added, it's available from then onwards. There's no data for a dimension that didn't exist prior. The report itself did take significantly longer to come out and be added to the UI, but I believe that since the dimension was collecting data before, the report itself should go back to when the dimension was available.
So Mark has asked, we missed the site speed report. Is that on the roadmap? Also, real-time doesn't seem as good as UA. Debugging is a lot easier. I could see my device in real time. So it's kind of a bit of a feedback or a feature request thing.
Yeah. So there's debug mode in GA4, which I think does a lot in terms of debugging that we didn't have in UA. I think there are some elements of UA real time that don't exist in GA4 and vice versa. And in terms of website and app speed reports, I can't disclose the roadmap, but I will say I hope so. And we'll see.
Yeah, I suppose there's always third-party tools like Pingdom and stuff which can kind of answer that question. The Joe has asked, today I created a funnel in GA4 Explorer that starts with a page path that contains something, and I get 2K views for 1 month, and it's sampled. I created the same funnel in Looker Studio, and the values are slightly different. Namely, the first step with page path is the same. I have 1.2K views. This is a bit kind of in the weeds kind of question here.
So the answer is simple though. In GA4, the Explorer interface, is using essentially a different data table. It's using a data table that has access to all data on a granular level, whereas the reporting interface is using aggregated reports. Looker Studio pulls from the data API, which accesses the same data that you have in the reporting interface, so the aggregated data table. So the underlying data between Explorer and what you can pull in Looker Studio via the native GA4 integration is actually different data. So your numbers might vary a little bit there depending on that, because it's aggregated data versus the full data table.
So that, I guess then if it's a copy of a standard report in Looker Studio, then it should be like one-to-one.
Yes, your Looker Studio reports should match what you see in the reporting UI of GA4.
So Google just needs to add a little button in the same way they say convert standard report into Explorer report. Clone this to Looker Studio.
That would be nice. I don't expect that to come probably ever, though.
Okay. So Christian asked, will there be a responsive, as they've been in the past, users with developments? I think that's again a kind of I think Google have probably got like a long list of feedback and features on their plate at the moment, so that may explain why they're a bit maybe snowed under. In UA annotation feature really useful. Again, this is a feature request one.
I think we've answered that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all of the feature request ones we'll just say I can't disclose the roadmap, but keep submitting your feedback to Google.
Yep. 7 minutes left. Krista, do you want me to continue going through the questions, or was there anything? Have you got any other things you want to sort of?
I'm looking through the questions here. I feel like a lot of them are either very specific use cases or feature requests. So let me just quickly do a scan to see if there's anything I can quickly answer. So I think Christian's saying he's still seeing real-time data in UA. Is that going to stop or continue? So you're one of the lucky few that hasn't been fully shut off yet, but it will be shut off relatively soon. It could happen any day. So I wouldn't put too much trust in your UA data going forward.
Yeah, we've had our last live account got disabled on like the 29th of August. So
I think there was a big cutoff on the 29th of August. I've heard of a lot of properties being shut off then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think most of the rest are pretty specific. So apologies if we didn't get to yours, but hopefully there was a lot of good info there. So I'd just like to say thank you again for having me. I'd love to see some of you in our KS Digital courses. So do use that promo code and come join us if you're interested in learning more about Google Analytics 4. Not only do you get the courses, but I also host monthly office hours where you can come ask me all your hard GA4 questions in person for all of our students. So would love to see some of you there.
Well, yeah, I've also just posted that link into chat for attendees. And okay, I'm just going to take screen share control for a moment. So speakers love to kind of hear what you liked, what could be improved. I've put the link into chat, which will go to a Google form. If attendees could sort of fill that in, or if you're on a mobile, sort of scan the QR code. I think Chris, if you can also just make sure that's in chat. Krista's slides unfortunately are not available, but we'll post the recordings when they're available, which will be next Tuesday for this particular talk. But if you fill in that feedback, there may be other resources we can put on there that may be helpful. So fill in the feedback and get to the thank you page on the feedback for like links and resources. We also have a kind of networking lounge which is on Kumo or Kumo Space. So I'll just put the link to that into chat. Krista, I don't know if you're around for the next kind of 15 minutes or so, or if you've got another that's a chance for people to kind of ask you questions like via video, and I think it's got a long list of questions. So it's kind of you move around in a space and it's got a room kind of in there, so like a kind of in-person networking space. So if you attendees jump over into that, and as I said, on the portal, we list all the speakers in the order that they're presenting today for that. Thank you again, Krista, for doing your talk.